Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. On this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Russia, about Moscow. We have lots of very interesting articles and statements. Russia rejects pressure. Kremlin takes Trump's ultimatum calmly. The special military operation will continue until the goals are achieved. Despite Trump's loud statements and his 50-day deadline, Russia does not intend to curtail the military operation, Reuters report citing sources close to the Kremlin. Moscow is convinced that the West is not ready for a serious conversation, which means that they will speak the language of force. Russia is acting based on Ukraine's weakness. The Ukraine armed forces are losing the ground. If defense collapses, we will advance further to the Dnieper, Sumy and Kharkov. The agency quotes a source in the Kremlin as saying, Moscow's goal remained the same: demilitarization, neutrality of Ukraine, protection of the Russian-speaking population, and legal consolidation of new territories for Russia. Dialogue on guarantees for Ukraine's security is possible, but Moscow's terms are and with the participation of major powers. The Kremlin believes that even 100% US tariffs will not change the situation. Russia will find ways to trade and the economy will withstand, as it has already done, especially since a significant part of the world, including China, does not support Washington's sanctions dictate. So this is very important article published by Russian media. Another statement we got from Ryabkov. The Russian Federation does not accept any attempts to make demands and especially ultimatums, Deputy Foreign Minister Ryabkov told us about Trump's new plan. If Russia's willingness to negotiate does not find a response, the set goals will continue to be achieved through the special military operation. You know that during the previous 3 days we had no attacks from the Russian side using drones and missiles, and that was very calm days when talking about attacks. And we connected this situation with the visit of Keith Kellogg. On the Sunday evening or on Monday morning he came to Kiev with a visit where he had a meeting with different authorities. He met with Ukrainian Defense Minister Umerov, the head of the main intelligence directorate Budanov, and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine Syrsky. And of course they were talking about war, they were talking about weapons that the United States of America are going to send Ukraine. So, and we believe that this is the main reason why the Russians stopped bombing and attacking the territory of Ukraine, because they didn't want additional escalation with the United States of America. We're talking about special envoy and the Russians wanted to create secure area for him. But most likely the Russians realized that the Western countries are playing with the Russian Federation, because while the Russians are not attacking Ukraine, are not attacking ammo depots, warehouses and many other different military objects, Ukraine is getting more and more weapons from the Western countries. So that is why the Russians decided to change their mind, despite the fact that most likely the relations between Russian Federation and the United States of America will be ruined, because the Russians are going to attack all over the entire territory of Ukraine during the special envoy Keith Kellogg is on the territory of Ukraine. And during the previous 12 hours, during the night between the 15th and the 16th of July, the Russians carried out another massive missile and drone strike, mainly in the southwestern part of Ukraine. According to information we have, several explosions were recorded on the territory of the city by the name of Ismail, which is located in the southwestern part. Ukrainians can get weapons and arms and supply through the Black Sea in this area, so we believe that the Russians managed to discover additional batch of weapons that came to Ukraine through this road. So that is why the Russians attacked this territory. Once again, lots of explosions were recorded. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians attacked the city of Odessa. So in this video we can see the consequences of another missile strike that was carried out on targets in Odessa. As for now we don't know for sure what exactly the Russians attacked, but most likely another batch of weapons. Furthermore, we have reports from the city of Kryvyi Rog, and when talking about this city, by the way, this is a homeland of the president of Ukraine Zelensky, lots of explosions were recorded. The sources are saying that the Russians carried out the biggest attack on the city since the beginning of the special military operation. We have just several pictures of consequences of attack. We have explosions. The sources are saying that the night in Kryvyi Rog, the largest attack since the beginning of the conflict. The head of the city reported that Kryvyi Rog suffered the largest attack since the beginning of the special military operation. According to him, more than 30 explosions were heard in the city. The strike was carried out by a ballistic missile and 28 ground drones. In several areas of the city, electricity and water supply were partially cut off. Communications were switched to backup power sources. As a result of attack, one of the industrial enterprises was seriously damaged. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians attacked the city of Vinnytsia, and that was another massive strike and the biggest attack since the beginning of the special military operation. Drone strike in Vinnytsia region at night. Damage to infrastructure recorded. Last night, 10 drones struck industrial infrastructure facilities in Vinnytsia region. A major fire was reported. So this is another and the biggest attack since the beginning of the special military operation. And as you can see, according to all these attacks, the Russians the previous night mainly concentrated in the southern and the southwestern part of Ukraine. So most likely the Russians were trying to destroy weapons and arms that Ukraine got through the Black Sea and from the state of Romania. So now let's wait and see what is going to be next. We still haven't received a map of approximate roads, and we still haven't received any report from the Minister of Defense of Ukraine where we could see the numbers of drones that the Russians used during the previous night. And at the same time, the Russians continue their offensive operation on the ground, and during the previous 12 hours, lots of changes on the ground were recorded. And first, let's talk about the South Donetsk direction and the Dnipropetrovsk area. Today we had several updates that were published both by pro-Ukrainian resources and by pro-Russian resources. And this is the fresh map, the freshest map of the pro-Ukrainian resources. And according to this map, we see that the Russians, during the previous 12 hours, managed to improve their positions. And currently the Russians are advancing from the settlement of Podubne in the direction of Andreevka-Klivtsova along the N15 road. The Russians, as you can see, managed to improve their positions significantly, and they have already passed up to 50% of the entire distance between Andreevka, Klivtsova and Podubne. Furthermore, according to Deep State, the Russians improved their positions in the fields. They marked lots of territories as a contested area or the gray zone. As for these routes of attacks, we see that the Russians are trying to get as close as possible to the final state, to the final village in this area, to the last village by the name of Alexandragrad. Now let's talk about the Pokrovsk direction. We have lots of very interesting updates that we got during the previous 12 hours. As for the previous days, we were talking a lot about the northeastern and the eastern flank of the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration, where the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to break through Ukrainian defense belt and to get as close as possible to the settlement of Rodinskaya. This is a key settlement in this area. If the Russians establish control over the settlement of Rodinskaya, this is going to be the beginning of complete collapse of Ukrainian defense in the area of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. When talking about the northeastern flank, today we got a very important video published from the settlement of Nikolaevka. We're talking about this video. I would like to remind you that several days ago, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the village of Nikolaevka was taken by the Russians without providing us any video or any proof that can confirm Russian control over this territory. But despite absence of any video confirmations, we adjusted this map, this part of the map in Russian favor. And just today, the Russians published the video. And in this video, we can see the process, how the Russians were fighting for the village of Nikolaevka. We can see how Russians were attacking the village with artillery, how Russians were attacking the village with FPV drones, and then we can see how Russian troopers were moving from one building to another, clearing one position, former position of the armed forces of Ukraine after another. Lots of episodes were recorded during this video, and as you can see, we have lots of icons. So now we have 100% proofs that the Russians secured the settlement and that currently the clashes are taking place already for the central part of the settlement of Novaya Ekonomichne. And obviously, it will take a lot of days, maybe weeks, before the Russians are able to secure everything along these red lines. So this is the settlement of Novoekonomichna, and these are villages to the west and the northwest of the settlements of Razino, Kopsno. So we're talking about this huge pocket. It will take time. Obviously, we're not talking about days. Maybe we're talking about 1 or 2 weeks. Anyway, the Russians have 50 days for this. Furthermore, and the most important is that today the Russians launched another offensive operation, but this time in the southwestern part of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. According to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians managed to take the village of Udachne in pincers. The Russians are advancing in the western direction, trying to seize control over the settlement, and the Russians are improving their positions in the southwestern direction. Furthermore, the Russians, as you can see, according to Deep State, entered the tree lines and railways between the villages of Udachne and Molodetska. This is very important because most likely this situation will force the Ukrainians to fall back from this area in the northern direction towards the next strategical position, the mine of Pokrovsk. And we believe that this Russian offensive operation is not something like a major offensive. This is a limited offensive operation, and the main purpose of this attack, of this limited offensive operation, is to establish complete control over the territories of the settlement of Molodetska, over the territory of the village of Udachne, and over the territory of the mine by the name of Pokrovsk. So these territories the Russians will try to establish control over, and if the Russians are able to do this, then they will be able to shorten the distance from this mine, which has a lot of very useful constructions that the Russians can use to attack Ukrainian logistic with FPV drones. If they take this territory under complete control, the distance between Russian positions and M30 road would be less than 6 kilometers, and this is already up to 80 or 90% of losses if Ukrainians decide to use this road for evacuation, for supplying and supporting. So the Russians are tightening the news around Ukrainian positions. Ukrainians are talking about Avdiivka number 2 or Bakhmut number 2, and obviously this is going to happen. This is the beginning, or this is already the intense major battle for the entire Donbas Arc operation. The Russians will continue. The battle of Pokrovsk is ongoing. Now let's move further. As for the Konstantinovka direction, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything. We haven't received anything neither from the area of Sherbinovka nor from the entire Kliban-Byksky pocket. We are waiting for additional updates today. The most interesting report we got from the area of Stupochki, very reliable pro-Russian resource, confirmed that the village of Stupochki was secured completely and that the Russians are finishing the battle or finishing the securing of the settlement of Pritechina. I would like to remind you that the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation confirmed control over this territory a long time ago, maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, but still several pro-Russian resources are saying that there are very heavy clashes. As for the Kupiansk direction, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything special, just small changes on the ground in the area of Grekovka. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map. Here we can see how Russians were attacking Ukrainian positions along tree lines, along different forest belts with motorcycles, how the Russians were moving through the fields, and the fire of the armored forces of Ukraine. So based on this video, we adjusted this small forest under complete Russian control. As for the northern Kupiansk direction, the most important updates are coming from the area of Milova in the northeastern part of Kharkiv Oblast. Today, pro-Ukrainian resources made additional changes on the ground, and according to them, the Russians managed to improve their positions significantly by taking under control additional tree belts, forest belts in the area of Ambarne. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates, between the 15th of July and the 16th of July of 2025. It seems that the Russians are about to begin, and everything is ready to begin offensive operations in the direction of the villages of Ambarne and Khatny during the next several days. This is very important because if the Russians take control over these two villages, this can lead to complete collapse of Ukrainian defense and Ukrainian positions in the entire and the most northeastern part of Kharkiv Oblast along the river Voskol. So let's wait for additional updates because most likely the Russians will intensify their offensive exactly in this area. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.